work in film in general?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thanks everybody for coming out in the midst of a really challenging time. I actually got into documentary filmmaking and producing through kind of arts activism and organizing, and so I helped. I guess 12 years ago now, I helped start an organization called Level Ground, which actually curated some of the art in the space, and Leo's here from Level Ground. And yeah, it was really through those relationships with artists and filmmakers that I started producing films. The first film I produced is called Framing Agnes, which is about these never-before-seen case files from the UCLA Gender Clinic in the 1950s, and kind of explores trans history at the turn of the mid-century. And then this is the second feature film that I've produced, and I found my way to this film actually through local organizing efforts here in LA. So I met Chris shortly after he was fired in 2020. At the time, he was trolling Jeff Bezos, basically. He was going around the country protesting at Jeff Bezos' many mansions. And so I was part of helping their protest here in Beverly Hills. Beyonce now owns Jeff Bezos' Beverly Hills mansion, in case you wanted a fun fact. But yeah, so that's really the origins of this film and of my relationship with Chris, really are from kind of this solidarity organizing framework. And so we started talking about a project right away, and we're able to kind of build the relationship, build the team, get some early funding so that we started actually filming the day before they launched this union campaign, which was just sort of happenstance. So we were part of the entire effort from day one. And it was, an incredible honor and journey. The ALU organized for, about 365 days, a full year. Our team, we had a really small team in the field. We filmed 300 days over that year and the following year and a half before we finished the film. And it's a really deep relationship of solidarity with the workers, with the movement, and all of that.
Wow, yeah. Did you have a question?
Hi, I'm Jean, by the way, in case anyone knows. I'm co-owner of Village House Cinema, and I just really want to say thank you for coming and making this film and everything. And I was really interested in your thoughts on why you feel a film like this right now is so necessary.
Yeah.
Why is it that you guys intentionally chose to make and produce this film, and your intentions with your company as well?
Yeah, I think, when I first met Chris and started thinking about why this should be a film, I was thinking a lot, and the team was thinking a lot about this idea of essential workers that just became the kind of this new framework of understanding the world and the economy and work in a really new way. And just having a sense that, in the midst of the pandemic and the George Floyd uprisings, and people were becoming politicized in new ways and becoming politicized through their work. And that was a really interesting question for us as filmmakers of how does that happen? Why does that happen? No one, if you were following the story at all while it was unfolding, nobody thought that they were going to win. And it wasn't like we as a film team thought they weren't going to win, but we didn't make the movie because we thought they were going to win. We were really interested and committed to documenting what felt like a noble, worthy effort regardless, and that it deserved attention and focus and study. And I think what we found, which maybe we had some ideas about, but was really palpable to see it, and you see in the film, is just the group dynamics of what it actually looks like to organize. And I think I'm sure most of us in this room might identify as organizers in some way, and often hear that the film feels like a really kind of honest portrayal of what that looks like, and what it means to be organizing across race, class, and gender. And I think that is what makes this film so important right now, is like, not only is labor maybe one of the few ways forward, which we could talk more about, but I think also being able to organize across difference and being able to organize with the realistic sense of what it takes and what it looks like, and that when it gets hard, it doesn't mean it's because it's not working or you're failing. It's actually part of breaking through all of the systems is to have these kind of internal infighting. And so I think and hope it kind of can be an honest and encouraging portrayal for us to like keep going.
Yeah, I think that's one of like the parts that your film in a way like to me captures organizing in like a way I've never seen on film before. And I think it like from the very first scene of like Chris on a grill giving food to people coming out of the workplace, like that kind of energy of just like providing community and like providing service, like stays throughout the whole film, and it's a really beautiful depiction. But then there is also like, especially in the third act, that this like conflict, right? And like you kind of like, I feel like you go even deeper where you're like, these are personalities, these are people, and like they're spending a ton of time together, and like there's conflict, right? So like,
and they have so little in common except for the fact that they work at Amazon, and many of them are single parents. They're commuting 2 hours each way, working 12-hour shifts overnight, and then spending the rest of their time at the tent with each other, and just like the way that grinds on you.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment or like what were the conversations like in the editing room? Like when you're processing those kind of scenes and like deciding, what to include and what to exclude, and like, I don't want to assume anything, but I get the vibe that this film exists as with a stance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it has it's telling a story from a position. And like, how did you manage that position with that footage and these vulnerable moments for the movement, right?
Yeah, it's a really astute question, and I think the conversations in the edit and what we learned through the editing, and we had like 800 hours of footage that we cut into an hour and 40 minutes, so it was a pretty grueling edit, and we were aware the whole time, especially towards the end when the conflict really started to emerge. Like there was some stuff we had that like wasn't going to be helpful for the movement, but it also wouldn't be helpful to avoid it entirely.
Yeah.
And so finding that balance, exactly what you're saying, it doesn't take a lot in a film to put you in that space of understanding what's happening. Like you didn't have to be heavy-handed. A little went a really long way in that regard, and it was the intention, from the very beginning that we were and are in solidarity with workers, and like we would never put anything out that was going to be a detriment to their efforts. And the ALU and everybody in the film, because we started filming before they started this effort, I think they really understood their organizing to be with the film. And so they were really open and really willing to trust us into those vulnerable moments, knowing that we had kind of proven that we were on their side and that they could trust us. But it's incredibly vulnerable to let yourself be seen in those moments. And so, all of those were really heavy considerations. Even small things, if anybody is a filmmaker, aspiring filmmaker in the room, of like, how much time you spend with someone at home makes you feel certain kinds of attachments to some people over others, and like really trying to balance out and not create emotionality to let the work and the people and the movement sort of speak for itself. It was a really delicate balance.
And very well done.
Yeah,
If
I didn't
could
edit
say.
it, but yes, I agree.
No, like I think it is a hard balance.
Yeah.
It's very delicate, but I think this film
Yeah.
does it really well.
Yeah.
So, but last question before I open it up to the audience, and then also we have a Twitch chat
Yeah.
that wants to ask questions too.
Yeah.
But I want to hear where the film is at right now. And like you've gone through these festivals, you've gotten a ton of it's a very celebrated project, and rightfully so, and yet
Yeah.
where are we at? Where is the film now?
Yeah, well, so the film premiered at Sundance last year and won an award there and was in competition and screened at 100 festivals all over the world. So we were just shortlisted for an Oscar. The film's been really well received, and Amazon hasn't come knocking to buy the film yet. Shocking.
What?
Can you believe it? But I think I'll speak for myself in terms of what I've experienced and sort of my understanding of what's happening is organized labor is so powerful. It's so powerful. And the more that people identify as workers, which for me, before I made this film, when I thought about my identity, worker was like not in the top 10 things I would have said. But it's true that most of us are workers, and that kind of cohesion is so threatening that there's just no kind of institutionalized corporate power that wants to get near it. And so while many films with our kind of trajectory and success would have gotten picked up by Netflix or HBO or a big distributor, that wasn't the case for us. Which isn't all that surprising, when you step back and look at it. But what it has meant is that we've gotten to distribute and release the film ourselves and really take up the mantle of the ALU. And it feels like this isn't what we're doing to get the film out to people is an organizing campaign. We're going person to person, community to community, really getting to nurture and contextualize what the film means out in the world, and that's been really exciting. And certainly our film Union is not the only film that has had, especially documentary, especially political documentary, that has had a hard time finding distribution in the United States, and that's just a trend of fascism and all of the things that we're very aware of. And I think it just creates an opportunity for community to really step in and fill in those gaps.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad we have the community here that are coming out and celebrating a film like this. Are there any questions in the audience here today that we'd like to in the back?
So it said they haven't started negotiating with them. So what does this win mean for them in their daily lives right now before that negotiation?
Yeah, great question. So it's been 2.5 years since they won. Amazon has objected, tried to object the results, I think 3 different times. The NLRB has overturned it each of those times. And Amazon has yet to even acknowledge the victory, let alone go to start negotiating. Last month, there was actually the largest strike on Amazon in U.S. history, and we filmed it. We made a short film. You can watch it, Field of Vision, if you want to check it out. And so and another significant update that sort of helps answer that question is last summer, the Amazon Labor Union affiliated with the Teamsters, which meant they got access to this strike fund, which allowed them to go on strike last month, and to many, many more resources. And, it's interesting, and within the labor movement, there's a lot of different opinions about how to organize Amazon in particular and what the strengths and weaknesses of unions are. But the reality is that you can be organized within a workplace and be gaining victories without a contract, with or without a contract. And so that's really what they've been focused on at the JFK 8 building and the other buildings that are organizing right now, is like, what does it look like to fight for certain kinds of wins, Weingarten rights, going on strike, protecting your coworkers, filing unfair labor practices, trying to get fired people reinstated. Like, there is a really robust sense of security that exists even without that contract. The things they can't get without the contract are like higher wages, better benefits, those kinds of things. But they are still organizing and fighting, for their rights.
What do you think from the chat?
Yeah, there's a question from chat saying, by the way, there's 300 people watching.
Oh my gosh, so fun, hi.
The question is, from your experience watching the whole process from the beginning to where they are now, what wisdom would you give other organizers who are just starting their journey in the workforce?
Advice for other organizers.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think so many different ways to answer that. I think that something I would say that I have observed in my own life and observed in the making of the film is, the ALU really thought of themselves and called themselves family a lot. And I think at the end, it really started to put a lot of pressure and a lot of exhaustion from that sense of relating to one another. And I think something I would say maybe to somebody just starting out in organizing is understanding this is a long haul thing, and that the relationships that you form within it are absolutely essential. And like that community that we're talking about is what makes people and what makes us believe that we can fight for more and that we can protect each other. And there's no point in organizing without that. And also, that's not everything, and you need to have some space and boundaries even within that, for the sake of the stamina required. And I think just recognizing, even with the ALU, they were so focused on winning this election. And like we were just talking about, it's been 2.5 years and they haven't even been recognized, let alone had a contract. And so it's organizing around the long-term thing, keeping the long-term thing in mind, while you're in the midst of trying to gain short-term wins.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, for it.
What can you do as fans of the film to support it
Yes.
through this period of not, getting the normal distribution a documentary like this should?
Yeah. Well, you can definitely follow us on social media. We're at Union the Film on all channels. Talk to people about the film. Really word of mouth and grassroots support, just like organizing, is what has propelled the film this far. Organizing screenings like this is amazing. I live in LA, so it's nice to be able to come here. I love the Robinson space, but you don't need a filmmaker to host a screening with some friends. And yeah, just talking about it, taking it out into the world with you, is huge, honestly. And the film you can rent the film yourself through our website at unionthefilm.com, and so you can point people there to actually rent the film. We're sharing rental revenue with the Amazon Labor Union Solidarity Fund. Yeah.
Okay, well,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead, Jane.
So, what were some of the biggest takeaways that you've learned from this experience as a filmmaker? And what do you feel
Yeah.
for filmmakers as a whole in these times that
Yeah.
our place in all of these big changing times that we're in?
Yeah.
That we can take from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, well, as a producer, I have my producerial answers where I'm like, you got a budget for distribution. That's probably not what you're looking for. I think the scene in the film where the tent blows down, like in that hurricane, Steve, who is a director and one of the cinematographers, it was like 4 a.m. He was like sleeping in his car in the parking lot, and the winds woke him up, and he grabbed his camera. And if the shot's out of focus, there's like a lot that's funky about it. He's like running to capture it. He's like, I want to help, but I got to get the shot. I got to get the shot long enough for the film because that is my role to play here, but it's not my only role to play. So, he got the shot, and then he helped clean up the tent. And I think it's such a microcosm of what I hope the role of filmmaking is in movement work is documenting what is happening is a really important part of validating the efforts and the journey. And obviously, being able to share and resource others. We really hoped that, and the film has been able to be a really important part of the labor movement and training and leadership development. So there's lots of reasons that it is useful to be filming this kind of movement work. And also the point is not to be outside of it. So I think understanding when you are part of it and when you are filming it. And, Steve and Martin are two cinematographers. They spent probably more time hanging out at the tent with the ALU without cameras than they did with cameras. And I think that's like a really important part of our role. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Leah maybe had a question.
Yeah, I did have a question. I guess it was just the part where the larger unions weren't supportive in the beginning. Can you talk more about why that was? I got that they were like being very condescending, but I was like, why wasn't there that support?
Yeah. Well, I think when they started organizing, Amazon was like 27 years old. The company had been around for 27 years, and no established union had been able to organize there. And it was really thought to be kind of impossible. If you remember, there was a big campaign in Bessemer, Alabama, with a facility down there that they spent a ton of money on that campaign and they didn't win. And so I think that a lot of the established bigger unions just felt like it wasn't, I'm speaking for them. I don't know. No one's told me this directly, but the sense was like, it's too expensive. It's too hard. It's not possible. And here's this group of workers who have no experience or training or education in organizing that are kind of breaking all the rules. Like, part of what is so wild about this film existing is that most unions get formed entirely in secret. Like, they would never let a camera in. They don't even announce that they're trying to unionize, where the ALU from the very beginning was like, the number one thing we have on our side is the media. Like, we have to be public, we have to be visible. So they were just breaking all of the rules, and I think it just felt like not worth supporting at that point. And I think where things are now, and part of what is happening now that gives me a lot of hope is that, there's this institutionalized labor union presence that has a lot of resources, a lot of history, but also a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of its own hierarchies that are problematic. And then you have these like upstart grassroots organizers that are really learning from like the Black Lives Matter movement and from climate organizing and like from a much more kind of embodied understanding of the stakes, and we're starting to see them working together, which I think is really great. But that was not the case at all with the ALU. Chris likes to say when they won, they had like $4 in their bank account. So they really fought to kind of combine these two worlds. Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but with like Bessemer, I remember reading a lot of reporting around that was talking about how Amazon's main form of attack against Bessemer was that it was an outside force coming in and trying to like involve itself in the plant.
Yes.
And that Amazon labor union's strength in many
Yes.
ways in this election was that it was like
Yeah.
of the workers. These people knew each other because they worked there.
Yeah.
They were workers, and this is not an outside, union force. So I love those scenes. I think it's very interesting that, they were going to
Yeah.
larger unions and hearing them out and like
Yeah.
having those conversations, but also, it
Yeah.
wasn't, they waited and they think they played a very smart strategic hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
By waiting until the moment that they did to involve a larger union, like the Teamsters, right?
Yeah, and Chris and Derek and a lot of the guys that were kind of the original ALU, they actually decided to try to form a union because they went down to Bessemer, and their experience was like, no one's talking to the workers here. Like, if this is going to happen at Amazon, it's got to happen from inside. And that was really their motivating force, was seeing the ways that it didn't work in Bessemer. And it's like the labor union busting, like labor consulting world is like so uncreative. They have like 3 talking points, and one of them is like this is a third party, and we like to have a direct relationship with you, and it complicated. You see in a couple of the inside scenes there, but it really complicated it because the ALU is able to say, we are not a third party, we are workers, and everybody knew that, and it took away one of their like 3 talking points.
Right. Yeah, it's also that openness too, where they're like, them allowing you to film and like, them being out in the open. It's like, this is not something you should be scared of. Like seeing other workers taking that risk on willingly is like a very emboldening thing for everybody. It is very different than like a secret union campaign where everybody's kind of like hiding it, like like.
Well, and I think it's hard to understate the fear that exists for Amazon workers when it comes to organizing and the threat of losing their job. Like, the fear is so palpable, and the ALU and those workers were just so brave to be putting themselves out there in that way and showing their coworkers like, we have power.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, one more. I didn't see it in the back.
There's a ongoing conversation in the documentary community about how to unionize documentary workers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, from your experience making this film about a insurmountable union effort,
Yeah.
what do you think about applying that to our film?
Yeah.
If I could just repeat the question.
Please.
The question was, how do we unionize documentary workers? Or like, what is your opinion as a worker in documentary making this film and unionizing?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Hollywood is actually very heavily unionized, for better or worse, or good or bad ways. And the documentary field exists kind of entirely outside of that. So we could have our critiques of SAG or WGA or whatever, but like there's really no access for that for documentary workers. And there have been some efforts. The IDA is unionized, the International Documentary Association, which is headquartered here in LA. There's a group called the Documentary Producers Alliance that are trying to organize. Production assistants are trying to organize right now across, doc and scripted. I think one of the big challenges in the documentary space is that there is no money. There is no boss in that sense. Like, producers are kind of like the boss, but especially in documentary are getting paid last and least.
Right.
And so I think about it, there are certain workplaces that I think really, like, I think there's a campaign efforts happening at Story Syndicate. But Vice, journal, like crossover between journalism for sure. And I think there's a lot more room to think about kind of a more cooperative, like worker-owned model within a documentary project, if you're talking about independent documentaries, where you could be thinking within a project about giving equity kind of across roles on the back end. I think there's ways to be more creative and have more power there, because there just isn't any kind of like institutionalized power within independent documentary so much. But there definitely are people trying within different areas, and I'm excited to see kind of what grows from there. But as a producer, I'm really thinking about on projects like, that more kind of cooperative ownership model of a project itself.
Can you shout out one more time how to see your short film?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. I really downplayed it, and I shouldn't. It's called Local One, and you can see it if you go on our Instagram, you can find it there. But if you go to Field of Vision, which is a documentary company distributor, you can see it for free on their website.
Cool.
It's called Local One. It's the same team that made this film, and it's 10-minute short about the first days of the strikes at the JFK 8 building and a neighboring warehouse in Queens. Chris is organizing internationally right now, and also trying to start a labor party. If that's of interest to you, you should check that out. And the ALU right now is the president is Connor, who's in the film. He's like in a black hoodie at the end, the one saying like people want to do things differently. He is the current president of ALU and is in the film, the short film. Yeah.
Yeah,
So such great
let's hear
questions.
a round of
Thank you,
applause
everybody.
for Samantha. Claps in the chat.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming. I really love this conversation, and also we're in no rush. This was a community space, so if obviously be on your way if you need to, but also like this is the beauty of being in a communal environment, is that we can talk to each other and reflect on the shared experience we just had, and build some solidarity. So if you feel like sticking around, grab a drink or whatever, you're more than welcome to stick around. So yeah, that's all. See ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for
Bye, Jack.
having me in the films.
Oh, yeah, of course. We're so happy that we were able to have you like on. This is really like nice. This is like